I welcome Payal Jain ji, a prominent name in the fashion industry, to this edition of GT Log podcast. With your permission only, मैं आपको पायल के नाम से ही संबोधित करूँगा. थैंक यू सो मच. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका हमारे पॉडकास्ट में. इन दिस पॉडकास्ट वी विल टॉक अबाउट योर लाइफ जर्नी. आपके करियर एक्सपीरियंसेस क्या हैं, चैलेंजेस कैसे रहे हैं, and achievements that have shaped your path. We will also talk about some standout moments from your life and the valuable lessons you have learned. Ultimately, this podcast aims to offer practical advice, industry knowledge, and encouragement to our listeners who are passionate about creating maybe positive change through their work in the fashion industry. Hopefully, your story will inspire us, the students and young entrepreneur aspiring to work in fashion and sustainability industry. Thank you so much. हम अपने इस कन्वर्सेशन को आगे बढ़ाते हैं और इस पॉडकास्ट में हम आपकी लाइफ जर्नी के बारे में जानेंगे और भी बहुत सारे डिस्कशंस करेंगे. तो पहला क्वेश्चन हमारा आपसे बेसिकली आपकी लाइफ जर्नी के बारे में ही है. आप हमें सब कुछ A to Z के बारे में बताइए. When I say A to Z, I particularly mean to say कि आप अपने जन्म से लेकर के एजुकेशन, सिबलिंग्स और पेरेंट्स सब कुछ बताएं.
अच्छा, थैंक यू अनुराग, थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग मी हियर. इट्स अ प्लेजर. आई एम ऑनर्ड टू स्टार्ट दिस न्यू सेट ऑफ पॉडकास्ट. मेरी लाइफ के बारे में आई थिंक वन थिंग आई विल स्टार्ट विद इज आई हैव हैड अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ बोथ माई पेरेंट्स. आई फील वेरी ब्लेस्ड कि इतना be it culture, be it education, be it sustainability, be it an all-rounded, holistic upbringing. I give my parents full credit for it. I'm an only child. Siblings nahi hain koi. So I think in some ways it was a blessing, and in some ways it was a little lonely. But having said that, my parents were my best friends. My mother is an artist, so music, every morning I would wake up with music. Sitar bajati thi. Before I was born, she started playing sitar. Wow. So I would wake up every morning to sitar. She was also an artist. She used to paint. उन्होंने ceramics किया था, canvas पे oil paintings की थी. My masi was a sculptor. So it was a family of a lot of art. I kind of grew up with art all around me. I remember 4-5 साल की उम्र से she would take me for all art exhibitions. उस टाइम म्यूज़िक में there were big maestros like रवि शंकर, उस्ताद अला रखा, किशोरी अमोनकर, कितने नाम, मतलब पंडित जसराज, उन सबको मैंने लाइव सुना है. स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम एज 5, I think 5 to maybe 18 till I was in India. I went with her for every concert. और अब तो वो होते ही नहीं है कॉन्सर्ट्स, वो बैठक्स नहीं होती हैं. तो म्यूज़िक, आर्ट, पेंटिंग, it was kind of part of my entire childhood. I remember सुबह 5 बजे उठा के मेरी मदर मुझे तुगलकाबाद ले जाती थी बर्ड वॉचिंग करने. And I would say, what is going on? 5 बजे कौन जाता है बर्ड वॉचिंग करने? But from that there was that whole sense of maybe the architecture, maybe the compassion for all living beings. All of that came from that. My father, who was a guru of sustainability, yes, which today we think of him as. But मेरा पूरा childhood was about living a sustainable way. So मतलब पानी was never wasted, nothing was thrown away. और हम as Indians we have this legacy. मतलब ये हमारी धरोहर है to be sustainable. हमारे grandparents, उनके grandparents कुछ फेंकते नहीं थे. खाना नहीं फेंका जाता था. जो खाना बच जाता था आप डॉग को खिला देंगे, गाय को खिला देंगे. कपड़े जो मैंने पहने हैं मेरे छोटे भाई बहन यूज़ करेंगे, उसके बाद वो पोछे में यूज़ हो जाएंगे. मतलब कुछ फेंका नहीं जाता था. दैट इज़ सस्टेनेबल वे ऑफ लाइफ. एंड एज Jains, I am a Jain, I am born a Jain, you believe in non-violence. So that is something, and both my parents are Jains, it so happened. So I grew up with a very strong ethos of philosophy, I would say, of Jainism. Not in a ritualistic way, but more in a philosophical and spiritual way where you believe कि अगर आप एक चींटी को भी तकलीफ दे रहे हैं तो that is adding to your karma. So there's this concept of non-violence in everything, and that extends to plants, to nature, to birds, to flowers. So you don't hurt anything. You nurture the environment. You nurture your earth. You basically celebrate all these bounties that you have been given on planet Earth. And my father was also used to read a lot of poetry, जो आपको नहीं मालूम होगा. So I grew up with Rabindranath Tagore's poetry. So शाम को बैठ के वो मेरे को टैगोर की poetry सुनाते थे. Or we would be listening to some ghazals, or so that was my childhood. So, and I think a lot of my work as a designer, when I decided to choose fashion as a career, is influenced by these dimensions.
थोड़ा पहले चलते हैं इस मतलब जैसे आपने बताया 5 साल में इतनी सारी न्यू रिच एक्सपीरियंसेस थे उस समय आपके पास में. मे बी आई थिंक इट इज अ ब्लेसिंग दैट यू हैव हैड अर्लियर. बट जैसे स्कूल एजुकेशन के बारे में भी थोड़ा सा बताएं.
So I went to modern school, Vasant Vihar. Throughout, I was in one school. Then I went to college, Jesus Mary College. I did a BCom honors, which क्योंकि I was 16 when I graduated. उस टाइम आपका वो +4 नहीं होता था जब आप स्कूल में जाते थे. So I started at 2, I think. And I was 16 and I told my father, now I want to go to the US to study. And he said, you're too young. You have to wait till you're 19. उससे पहले मैं नहीं भेजूँगा. So then I said, okay, what to do? I wasn't clear. I wanted to do something in arts related. Although I had science in school, and that time, मेरे father की influence कितना था, and I would be meeting architects, engineers, talking about buildings. So I wanted to study architecture. So मैंने mechanical drawing लिया था school में. And then I remember 11th standard में, he said, why don't you go and work with an architect? Internship करो summer में. You will get to know a little more about architecture. और बहुत सारे आर्किटेक्ट से मिलवाया because I wasn't clear what I wanted. I enjoyed mechanical drawing, but I wasn't sure कि ये मेरी destiny होगी. So I met a lot of architects, had lots of conversations, worked in an architect's office in the summer. Long and short of it, I was very disillusioned with architecture. When you're 15 और आपको कोई professional कहे जो उस business में रहे हैं 20-25 साल, कि it's very boring और इसमें कोई freedom नहीं है, there's no creativity, there's no, आपको client की wishes पे सब कुछ करना पड़ता है. So you are very impressionable. Now when I look back, I think I made that decision maybe too quickly. But I was 15 and 16 and I was hearing from people who had been in this business for 30 years saying that there's no joy and there's no happiness. And so it was kind of one of those things. I said, no, I don't want to do architecture. But तब तक 12th खत्म हो गई थी और मैंने architecture exams दे दिए थे and I got into architecture school. So now that I didn't have admission in any other colleges. So I said, but मेरे को तो पढ़ना नहीं है architecture. So my father said, what do you want to do? It's too late. So I said, okay, then I want to do something creative. And still I wasn't sure what that was. So I said, okay, because now I don't have a choice, let me do a basic degree in business because it will be useful at some point. So I applied to Jesus and Mary College, literally, beg, plead, करके उन्होंने मुझे एक सीट दी BCom honors की. I had the grades, but I was too late because I missed the board. वो close हो गया था. So I remember I used to go and sit outside the sister's office every day and say, please, I want this course. She would say, ये ले लो, वो ले लो. I said, नहीं, मेरे को यही चाहिए, ये BCom honors चाहिए. Anyway, I got into BCom honors, JMC. I realized that this was not my thing. अब वो 3 साल का प्रोग्राम था, बीच में तो छोड़ नहीं सकते थे. And I had to get to an age where my father would let me go somewhere outside the country to study. So मैंने किया BCom honors, but I have to tell you, accountancy, audit, finance, economics, it's not my scene. I was very unhappy, very, very unhappy. So I went from science to commerce, and then from commerce to arts, basically. So जो लोगों को लगता है कि उनको स्कूल में नहीं समझ में आ रहा क्या करना है, they'll eventually find it. मतलब there's no rush, there's no shortcut to this. And then I remember I was, so my father said, okay, why don't you meet few people, have some conversation. So I met this friend of his, and he said, why, what did you like about architecture? And I said, मेरे को drawing बहुत पसंद है. So I had started doing still life classes and still life drawing where fruit, an apple, a person, which my mother used to take me for still life sketches when I was 8 onwards. So मैंने drawing बहुत पहले शुरू कर दी थी. Sketching and drawing is something I love. उसी से mechanical drawing आया. Basically that's how I decided to do my mechanical drawing. So that sketching and drawing was still at the core of my heart. So I said, this is what I love. So he said, have you thought of fashion? And I'm talking about the late 80s. And I said, what is fashion? And he said, oh, you can design clothes. And I said, well, it sounds very exciting, you know, but I don't know anything about it. So he said, why don't you find out, you know, dig a little deeper. And I'm talking about the time जब internet नहीं होता था. So आप Google पे जाके सब ढूंढ नहीं सकते. I can't Google fashion and I have 2,000 pages, or I can't go to AI and it'll tell me what fashion is. I did not know what it was.
बिल्कुल पर्सन टू पर्सन इन्फॉर्मेशन शेयर होती है.
हाँ बिल्कुल. और आपको इंटरनेशनल इन्फॉर्मेशन तो बहुत लिमिटेड थी ना. So I went to British Council Library because वही ऑप्शन था. So I sat in the library, looked at all the fashion schools, you know, so उनके prospectuses होते थे library में. जितने मतलब I suppose जितने possible थे world over के उनके, and there were books which could tell about. So I read all of those. I said, yeah, sounds very exciting. Now how should I find the colleges? So I found a list, made a short list from the library of the colleges that I. NIFT तब शुरू ही हुआ था. It was too new and there was really no history of NIFT. But I was very clear I wanted to go to the US because हर summer मैंने US में spend करी थी from the time I was 4 or 5 because my father's sister was in the US. So I used to spend every summer in California. So I said मुझे college तो यहीं पे ही करना है. So मैंने US के colleges ढूंढे. So then I told my father मैंने ये 10 colleges ढूंढे. Now how do I know further? मतलब उनको लिखा. अब 2 महीने 3 महीने प्रोसेस चलता रहता है. वो पोस्ट से जाता था, पोस्ट से आता था रिप्लाई. Obviously I'm not a priority for them. जब उनको टाइम होगा वो लिखेंगे. So my father said, okay, समर में हम चलेंगे. You can look at the colleges. We'll go to New York. We'll go to California. You visit these colleges. Identify. एक short list कर लो 7-8 colleges की. So I did that. Meanwhile I was doing my BCom, and he said, why don't you try your hand at it? So I said, okay. So I went and bought some fabrics. I said, मैं tailor ढूंढूं कुछ. Let me try my hand.
Just hold this thought here. मतलब अगर मैं if I look back what the journey that you have shared, it's very exciting. आपके फादर बहुत फेमस MEP इंजीनियर रहे. उन्होंने बहुत सारी नॉलेज इंडिया में लेकर के आए बाहर से और यहाँ पे बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस सेटअप किया. इस तरह के इन्वायरमेंट में देखा जाए तो आपके घर में बहुत सारी जो म्यूज़िक से रिलेटेड चीज़ें थी जिसका आपकी वो लाइफ बहुत इंप्रेशन पड़ा और फिर उसके बेसिस पे यू वांटेड टू बी एन आर्किटेक्ट. बट आपको लगा कि जो प्रैक्टिस है इट इज़ नॉट गवर्न बाई द मे बी इनोवेशन और क्रिएटिविटी, बट इट इज़ गवर्न बाई द क्लाइंट स्पेशलिस्ट. और इसीलिए वो क्रिएटिव साइड में जाने की एस्पिरेशन के बावजूद भी यू हैव गॉन टू डू द BCom just as a and then
as a
filler and because you wanted to go to US to do something more creative. और उस टाइम पे आप जा नहीं सकती थी इसलिए आपने BCom एज ए डिग्री के बारे में चुना. तो मतलब इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग एंड इट्स मे बी एक्साइटिंग नो हाउ दैट मे बी आई थिंक जो हमारे लिसनर्स के लिए है कि किस हिसाब से इस तरह के माहौल में जो लोग जो बच्चे पढ़ते हैं उसके लिए कैसे टर्न्स एंड डाउन्स होते हैं कि आपने करना कुछ और था करते कुछ. और ये मुझे लगता है कि इन जनरल आप देखिए एक नॉर्मल मिडिल क्लास फैमिली में या अपर मिडिल क्लास फैमिली में ये एक जो बच्चे 15 साल से 20 साल की एज के ग्रुप होते हैं उनमें ये एक नॉर्मल विधा यही रहती है, यही प्रोसेस रहती है, डिसाइड नहीं कर पाते हैं. और इस हिसाब से आपके उसमें बहुत क्लैरिटी थी कि आपको आर्किटेक्चर करना था बट नहीं कर पाए एंड देन यू हैव गॉन टू फैशन डिज़ाइन. गो अहेड प्लीज.
Also one thing I would say is why I did BCom honors क्योंकि eco honors, philosophy ये सारे options थे. But I had seen entrepreneurship was I think in my blood because my father had started Spectral you know 10-15 years before that. So I thought I want to work for myself. I never even considered the fact that I may want to have a job because that was something which came, and my mother is a business family, you know, father came, so it kind of was in my blood, I suppose. Now when I look back, that why did I do a BCom honors was because I thought it will give me some tools for when I have to have my business. It will teach me some basic finance which I had no knowledge of because I never had commerce in school. And it did. So it did help in whatever. I hated it, of course, every minute of it. But I did learn a lot of things in the process. So then, so we went to see fashion schools. And we had shortlisted some 7-8. So हम New York गए, San Francisco गए, LA गए, बीच में 1-2 और cities गए. physically went to these colleges. वो छोटा सा tour देते हैं आपको college में. But they were very small, very competitive. Design schools are very competitive. Not as much like design schools here जहाँ मतलब 1-2 हज़ार बच्चे पढ़ रहे होते हैं. वहाँ every batch used to be maybe about 20, 30, 50 kids. So they were super selective. And most of them said you have to have a portfolio.
उस समय हमारे यहाँ पे ऐसे कॉलेजेस नहीं थे.
खाली निफ्ट था. निफ्ट तब शुरू हुआ था. निफ्ट was just maybe a year old or something. और कोई भी नहीं था. And fashion was kind of non-existent. I mean, in this country at least, fashion was non-existent. So उन्होंने कहा you have to send us a portfolio. Now I said, what is a portfolio? So they told me that this is what you need to put together. You have to have your sketches. You have to have this. You have to think through garment construction. अगर fashion करना है, but we are super selective, and you may or may not get in. Every college had the same thing. You have to work very hard, and then we'll let you know. You know, if you're worthy of it, then we will give you admission. Ab New York mein, I loved the schools, but my father said, "This I can't send you here to this city. It's not the safest." Then we looked at California. So long and short, I had a short list of 5-6 colleges. Came back, started working on my portfolio. Meanwhile, next summer, I said, let me try my hand at fashion. So went and found one tailor from the market, went and bought a whole lot of fabrics. And because I could sketch, I had the capability of sketching. I could visualize in 3 dimensions. That's what my studies in mechanical drawing taught me, that I could visualize 3-dimensionally. Even now, if you show me a drawing of any architectural drawing, I can visualize it 3-dimensionally. I don't need to have somebody interpret that drawing for me.
Wow.
You know, I can understand what it's going to look like. So I suppose that was a tool I possessed. I didn't think of it as that, but I could visualize what this garment is going to look like. So I sketched, I sat with the tailor, spent a month and a half, summer was 2 months, and made these, I don't know, maybe 30 odd outfits. So my mom said, okay, घर पे लगा देते हैं, and I'll call some of my friends. Okay, ठीक है. Now all those friends were friends of theirs. तो बेचारे उन्होंने खरीद लिया सब कुछ, because they were just feeling sorry for me, I think, and out of obligation कि भाई मेरे parents ने बुलाया, so you feel obligated, so they bought. I was over the moon.
So
I did not think.
At that point of time, you were thinking कि आप business बनाएंगी.
हाँ, of course. तब तक मैंने fashion school में apply तो कर ही दिया था ना. I was working on my portfolio.
Right.
This was year 2. Year 1, I went and saw the colleges. Year 2 was the exhibition, and I started applying to the colleges. But I wanted to know, do I enjoy this enough? So this was like a trial run. There was nobody I could go work with. Well, that didn't exist. You couldn't go work with a designer or intern and say, can I come and hang with you for 6 weeks? There were no such designers. So who? And I didn't know any. Nor did my parents know any. So year 2 was then I was working on my portfolio. Anyway, I thought, I'd become a designer because people like my clothes. Even though it was a myth, it was in my head. They must have bought out of obligation. But and then I got through. Then the process started with the colleges, the interview process. So after you send the portfolio, so I had to make 6 portfolios because there were 6 different colleges. So physical भेजना पड़ता था, digital तो होता नहीं था. So you had to make 6 sets of it. That much work went in, months and months. Sent it to them, then they reverted back through post. Then they said, okay, interviews will happen on the phone. I had my eyes set on one particular college in San Francisco called Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and they were very, very tough nuts. They said, we don't want you, we are very difficult. आप class नहीं करोगे यहाँ पे. When I went to visit the college, they said, आप कहीं और चले जाओ. There are many other good colleges. Why do you want to come here? This is very competitive. You won't last 3 months में हम अगर आपका ये grade point average नहीं आएगा तो we ask you to leave. And it was so small that there were only 40 kids who would start, and roughly 25 would graduate. The others would actually slip through the cracks because it was so tough that they couldn't cope with the pressure. So I was kind of stuck on this. I said, मुझे यहीं जाना है, and this is the course I want to do. So I'd sent, and then the interview started on the phone with various colleges. This particular college, there was a counselor who was making these phone calls, interviews. एक घंटे के interviews होते थे phone पे after she had received my portfolio. And she was a lovely person. I think I was just lucky. She later became a very dear friend, personal friend also. And so we went through 1 round, 2nd round, 3rd round, and then she finally said, okay, you're in now. I remember I gave my BCom the last exam. I never even waited to go and collect my degree. I got on the next flight and left because exams April में होते थे and May में the college was starting. So I literally got on the next flight and left. And my father went with me to drop me to college. And so here I am in San Francisco, and design schools choti buildings hote hain, they have no campuses. So there was no dorm. So you had to get you had to find a private dorm, or you had to find a women's hostel or a men's hostel, whatever, and stay in that. And the college was downtown, smack downtown Union Square. So I couldn't afford living there, so I had to find a hostel to live in. So he came with me. He bought me a map of San Francisco, got me whatever I needed, dropped me at the hostel, and took the next flight back. And said, "You're on your own now." And I'm an only child. I was brought up with a lot of fine. I had traveled a lot, all that, but still living on your own, living in another country. And I had no family in San Francisco. Family was in extended parts of California, and I was in a women's hostel, which basically had a lot of older women who had been, who had no family, or family didn't want to take care of them, so isliye wo wahan reh rahe. You know how the American environment is. So they were American ladies, all which were an older demographic, because their families didn't want them. So it was a very depressing environment, and the work was, it was 18 hours of work every day. So they weren't kidding when they said ki, you won't survive here, tough hai. And I thought, I see keh rahe hain tough hai, but it was very, very tough. Something that I still laugh about, first day I go to college, and India में आप college में कब कुछ type नहीं करते हैं, सब handwritten होता है. तब तो होता था, I don't know, अब when it's computerized हो गया अलग होगा, but that time all classes were handwritten. So I walk into the class and I'm told, all your assignments have to be typed. If you don't submit it typed, it's a 0. You have to make your own garment in the first class, and you have to stitch it yourself. The machine is here, and if you don't stitch it and give it in on so and so date, it's a 0. Both of which I had never sat on a machine. यहाँ तो टेलर से बनवाया था. I had never sat on a machine, and industrial machine is industrial machine. So यहाँ तो वो हाथ वाली machine होती है. This was like you put your feet and it runs at 200 kilometers an hour. So they put me on the machine. You have to submit. You have to stitch it and give it. Otherwise 0. And यहाँ US में एक grade point system होता है. So every quarter you are graded. Every class is graded. उसका average आपका quarter का grade होता है. और सारे quarters का grade आपका final grade होगा where you graduate. So there's no such party happening. You can't like sleep through the semester. Last day आप उठ के आप अपना एग्जाम देकर आ जाओ. Nothing like. Every class is graded, and it's a percentage of your grade. And that final grand total of that grade is what you graduate. Now, my father, being who he was, graduated with a 4.0 grade point average, which was ultimately, it is 4.0 on 4.0. There's nothing more. It's like 100 on 100. For his masters, and his PhD was also 4.0, if you can believe that. So that was in my head.
He was very studious.
He was brilliant. He was brilliant. Yeah. He did a double PhD in mechanical and electrical engineering at the same time.
Wow.
And graduated with a 4.0 GPA. So, you couldn't have asked, but that was kind of what my sight was. Now here it seemed impossible. I said, I have to graduate with a 4.0. I'm going to kill myself over it. I will do it.
Pressure.
So, a self-inflicted pressure. They never told me so. And so the classes started. And so I had to learn to type. In 24 hours, I sat in that library for the next. I didn't own a typewriter. Obviously, I didn't own a typewriter. So the next 3 days, I sat in the library, just learned to type. Ek finger se. Because the first project had to be submitted typed. Machine, again, they said the lab is here. You can sit here. You can sit through the night if you want to, but you have to submit it. So 2 रातें काम करके I actually stitched the garment. I learned to type, submitted the first. I go to college. I finish stitching this garment after 2 nights. I go back home, crash for 2 hours, and come back from the dorm. And this muslin, this toile, you make a toile garment, is in my bag. And I walk into one class, and then you carried your bag through the classes. And I reach the class where I'm supposed to submit it, and it's not there in the bag. And I'm thinking, I just spent my blood and sweat and made this. Where has it gone? And I told the professor, I said, it's not there, but I made it. She said, I'm sorry, you have to submit it. It's not my problem that it's not there. I said,
ये-
but I made it.
ये फाइनल
नहीं ये तो फर्स्ट क्लास
First
या
class.
जो ग्रेड मतलब आफ्टर 2 weeks or so when
Okay.
I had to submit the first toile.
Hmm.
So you make it out of a muslin में बनता है fashion में, so where you are testing, you are making your pinning and your stitching. तो वो बहुत टाइम लगा के मैंने स्टिच किया था, because स्टिच भी नहीं आता था मुझे करना. I didn't know how to sit on a machine, which I learned. So obviously somebody had picked it out of my bag and submitted it as theirs, because you can't make out the difference. Right? Everybody had to submit the same toile. So she said, I'm sorry, I'll give you one more night. If you don't,
वहाँ पर भी ऐसा होता है.
सब जगह ऐसा होता है दुनिया में. I mean, this was testing time, so it happened. So I said, okay, give me till tomorrow morning. I sat through that night in the college, made it again, and submitted it the next day, because I said, I'm not going to get a 0 on this, not after so much work I have done.
Wow.
So that's just a few instances that I remember. Anyway, long and short, it was a tough, very tough program. 16-18 hours a day, constantly on it. There was no other way.
वुमेन हॉस्टल का भी बताइए, जैसे आप बताएं कि ज़्यादातर एज
So-
डिफरेंस था.
हाँ, so this and khana bhi, it was just like, and you know, I didn't eat all that meats and all of those. So it was only pasta or potatoes or bread. I mean, what choice? You come back shattered. 18 घंटे आप वैसे ही काम कर रहे हो, जो मिल जाए ठीक है.
हम लोग
Who has the
जैन
time?
में तो कुछ वैसे भी नहीं खाते हैं, सब सात्विक फूड होता है.
और सात्विक तो खैर नहीं है. I mean, but I'm not that religious Jain. But yeah, I couldn't eat red meat and all this stuff. I still needed something very basic. Mahina nikla, I was very depressed. It was very depressing environment also, because there were all these old women who were very unhappy. There were no students. जो students थे वो दूर से आते थे. Downtown कोई नहीं रहता था, but it made sense for me because I could walk to college and walk back, and I could afford that. My parents had taken a loan to send me to college, so they could only, and they would send me an X amount of money every month, which worked out for this hostel. I could afford to pay that, plus manage the rest of my expenses. But after, I think 6 months, I put on 10 kilos because I was eating pasta and potatoes and bread, and I was depressed out of my mind, and I was working round the clock. So I called my father. I said, I can't live here. I just can't live here. I was anyway very miserable being away from my parents. So जब भी phone calls were so expensive. So हफ्ते में एक बार my mother would call or my father would call, and I would be crying. I said, I'm so miserable. I'm so lonely. And my father would say, try, try some more. You've gone with this commitment. Try a little bit more, and if you hate it, then you come back, but give it your best shot. I said, try करते करते बहुत सारे महीने निकल गए, and 6 months later I said, look, I can't live here. At least I'll survive, but I can't live here. So I went and found an apartment which was cheap down the road, and managed to move out. I didn't know how to cook, but जो dorm में जो हमारी receptionist थी, she was an Indian from Punjab. But she'd been living, so she used to feel very sorry for me. So she used to make her food from home and come and bring it for me, some roti and some dal and sabzi and whatever else. So then, when I moved to an apartment, I called her, Anu. I said, what should I do? I don't know how to make chai. I don't know how to make anything. How am I going to live? I have moved, but I need to be able to feed myself, and I can't afford to buy food from outside. So she said, okay, come over. I'll teach you how to make dal. I'll teach you how to make this. I'll teach you how to make. So that's how I learned to cook, and of course, by this point, I was kind of learning how to navigate my way around the college. I was the only Indian. Out of the 50, I was the only Indian. One and only Indian. And I remember when they had a Diwali was coming. They said, can you do something which is India Pavilion? Because we want to have this celebration. So I actually had these dummies. I did a sari. I did, did some Indian rangoli and all of that, because they had no other Indians. So
उस समय Indians as an Indian, मतलब other लोगों की जो perception about India वो कैसा था?
वो I have to say wasn't good. I mean, today things are very different. That time you were from a third world country. You were brown, you were a woman, and you were from a third world country. So they weren't going to do anything to help you. That's how it was the unsaid thing. They didn't have to say so, but you always felt like जो internships आती थी, job prospects they would never consider me, even though I was at the top of the class. But because the placement officer was an American and she did not like Indians, she did not like the fact that I was a woman and an Indian and working there, so she wouldn't give me an opportunity. But that's how it was. And so I went and got my own jobs, and I worked for free, because officially, if I had to work and get paid, it had to be through the college. And the college counselor refused to help. So I did work enough places during those 3 years and learnt enough. But I think something that I really learned more than the education of fashion was the life skills. You know, that you're gonna have to keep focus of your dreams and then just keep taking, you know, one small step, and yeah, you'll fall and then you get up, and you'll fall again and you'll get up, because at the end of the day, if your dreams are bigger than your challenges, you will get there. And you know, now when I look back, it was very, very tough. I don't know how I survived. I think it was just the fact that my father kept saying, you can do it, and try one more day and one more day and you can do it. And I did, because it was 18 hours of work for 3 years, every single day. And I did graduate with a 4.0, which was a task. But I felt so, had I graduated with a 3.6, I probably would have had a life, which I didn't have. I was just working around the clock. But it felt so good. It felt so good. And I just learned to survive. I think that's what I learned. That to survive, you have to believe, you have to dream. If you don't dream, how will you achieve those dreams?
तो वहाँ पे आपने फिर काम भी किया after education?
Not after. While I was studying, I did. But by the time I finished, I was in a rush to come back. I said, मुझे वापस जाके शुरू करना है.
वापस आए इंडिया में, certainly there was a pleasure कि आपको family के साथ reunion हो रही है, आपको रहने का मौका मिल रहा है उनके साथ. But in general, professionally, देखें तो it was an advantage because you have come from America with a degree.
No. Even when I came back, there was no need for design. There was no fashion designer space. Nobody knew what a designer was. Nobody, and I was making Western clothing because that's what my education was. But yes, I was working with Indian textiles because that's what my passion is. But nobody wanted jackets. Nobody wanted Western clothes. Everybody was wearing saris and salwar kameezes, and that's not what my strength was. So I started this small studio in Hoskars Village with, I borrowed 25,000 rupees from my father. Rent that time was 3,000-4,000. Electricity was another few thousand. So 25,000 में वो जगह थी, मतलब there was one floor in Hoskars Village which was available. The only place I could afford. But nobody wanted Western clothing.
ये कब की बात है?
ये 93. So it's been exactly 30 years last year.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. 1993. When I started my studio in Hoskars Village, and I had Western clothes. I was doing dresses and cocktail dresses and suits, and people would come and they would say, अच्छा हम अपना कपड़ा लेकर आ जाते हैं, आप हमारे लिए जैकेट बना दो. I said, but I'm a designer, I'm not a tailor. नहीं, आप हमारे कपड़े से बना दो. So बहुत हाथ पाँव जोड़ के I said, no, I can't. Then slowly one-off person came. Okay, I want a dress, I want a cocktail dress, I want this dress, मुझे evening के लिए पहननी है. But that time, even for somebody to pay 1,000 rupees for a dress was like asking them for their kidney, you know, because they would pay 10,000 rupees for a sari, but they will not pay 1,000 rupees for a dress or for a jacket. Because they say, ये क्या करेंगे हम इसका, हम बच्चों को तो दे नहीं सकते, it's useless, हम एक बार पहनेंगे and then what? So even the most successful corporate women, and I'm talking those who are working, heading hotels and airlines and working in corporate jobs, even they wore saris. That was the culture in India. There was no need for Western clothing, and there was certainly no need for a designer making Western clothing. You know, that took its own time.
तो उसमें बनारसी साड़ी और सब
all types of saris. I won't say Banarsi, but women were very happy with saris and with salwar kameezes. That's what even the most you know, sort of free-thinking, literate, educated, working women wore. They still wore Indian clothes. They did not wear Western clothes. And today, you go even to tier 2, tier 3 cities, everybody's wearing Western. Everybody. So that is the kind of the progression of fashion. I've seen that entire journey of fashion becoming a industry, becoming you know, something you aspire to be now. I mentor so many children. इतने लोग fashion पढ़ना चाहते हैं. But that time there was nobody even understood a designer क्या होता है. It was sort of very early days. There was Ritu Kumar, who still is, you know, a designer I really look up to. There was Beena Ramani. There was a designer called Rohit Khosla who passed away very young, but that was it. और कोई था ही नहीं. There was nobody else. Tarun Tahiliani was starting to sort of get known, but it was 30 years ago.
उसमें मतलब इन लोगों से बातचीत होती थी?
नहीं, तब तो नहीं होती थी. I was a young, struggling designer. I mean, now they happen to be good friends, but नहीं, तब तो नहीं होती थी.
Very nice. I think it's very. Maybe I think hustling was also one of the integral component of your journey, at least in the college.
Yeah, I won't say hustling, but surviving more than learning the life skills to deal with anything. And the American system gives you this one thing which I feel a lot of other countries don't. They give you the real practical aspect of whatever you are studying. So हमारे सारे professors were people who had their businesses. They would also come and teach. So you constantly knew practical. It was not theoretical. You knew when you got out there what you will have to deal with. So there was always this aspect, and there was no bhaichara. It doesn't exist. I'm not your friend, you're not my friend. You want something, ask for it. So that's something else I learned. If I want something, I have to ask for it. Nobody's going to give it to me. There are no handouts, there are no free lunches. You will have to ask or you'll have to work for what you get. कोई देने नहीं वाला आपको platter पे. जैसे यहाँ तो your parents will go out of their way and do this for you and that for you and your family and your support system and your friends. Everybody, आप एक phone करो 50 लोग आ जाएंगे. वहाँ तो किसी को phone भी नहीं कर सकते. You'll have to message and say, can I call you please? So culturally, America is very different than India is. We take this for granted. This community that we have, I can call you and say, Anurag, can you come and this PJMT का ये हो रहा है, please आ जाओ. I don't even think about it.
Right.
I cannot do this. I cannot do this in the Western world. So these are blessings.
Great. तो मतलब next उस पे जाते हैं. जैसे आपके father, Dr. P.C. Jain said, he has been influencing maybe I think millions of people in India and maybe across the world as well. आपके ऊपर उनका asset because he was your father. So आपके ऊपर अपने father का on your career कितना influence रहा है? Certainly एक part तो आपने बताया ही है कि जो self declared aspiration थी 4.0 लाने की, उसके अलावा
I mean everything. I think everything I am is because of him. He influenced every aspect of my being. Whether it was intellectual or emotional or aspirational or everything.
Were you father's daughter or mama's daughter?
Father's for sure. No question.
Okay.
He was like, he was my best friend. I would share everything with him. I remember even my first boyfriend, I called him and told him, who else was I going to tell? He was my best friend. I would share everything. If I had a fight with my husband, I would call him and cry. Every single thing. He was my go-to person. He was my person. Whether it was professional advice or personal advice or college or some dreams that I have, I want to do this, or I'm taking on a new project. When I started working, there were constant challenges, and I would talk to him 10 times in the day. So he knew everything about my life on a minute-to-minute basis. Wherever he was on the planet, he knew what I was doing, and I would reach out to him for advice for everything. So I think all of who I am is thanks to what he has given me. Even in terms of his value system, his belief, his communication with people. He would take me to on and off. He would take me to School of Architecture when he would be teaching his classes, and I would just kind of shadow and I would hang around and watch him teaching. So I've been blessed to be part of.
And he was very articulating also.
He's very articulating.
किसी भी मुझे लगता है कि आप प्लेटफॉर्म पे फोरम पे कहीं पर भी मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग जब सुनते थे तो हमें लगता नहीं था कि वो कोई भी ऐसा सेंटेंस जो है वो बिना सोचे समझे बोल रहे हैं. But I think it was coming naturally.
It was natural. He was one of those rare, I would say, engineers who was also very good with expression and communication. You don't usually come across. They're very good. They may be very good technically, but their expression is not as good. Or they may be very good expressing and may not be very, either or. But he was one of those, and also he could write. He wrote poetry. So he would write emails to me or letters to me, all of which I have saved.
Wow.
But he believed in writing it all. So he would always, on my birthday or any special, he would actually write a long note and send it to me. So it wasn't always about saying. Sometimes he felt he needed to say something more. So he would write it in a letter. And I do the same for my children now. So that's something I've just followed as a tradition, that I will write to them. that once or twice a year I write a long note to them saying, now this year is starting and I hope you will do this. So, I mean, he has influenced all of us, whether it is me or my husband or the children. He was kind of our role model. He always has been.
थोड़ा सा अपनी एज ए फैमिली के बारे में बताइए, अपने कंपेनियन हस्बैंड से कैसे मुलाकात हुई?
मुलाकात, so I had come back and I had started my studio Oscars Village में, and summer काम तो बहुत ज़्यादा था नहीं पहले कुछ सालों में. It was ऐसे he was hanging around the place. At the summer, the Oscars Village used to shut, which was an unusual thing. 2 महीने बंद हो जाती थी, पूरी Oscars Village बंद हो जाती थी. जून जुलाई everybody would shut shop, go home. जैसे स्पेन में होता है, और आप 2 महीने बाद आओ, बिकॉज इतनी गर्मी होती थी, टूरिस्ट आते नहीं थे, एंड इट वाज मोर ऑफ अ टूरिस्ट थिंग. सो यू हैड द समर फ्री. सो अब 1 साल 1.5 साल काम करने के बाद आई सेव्ड लिटिल बिट ऑफ मनी, सो आई सेड आई हैव 8 weeks free, let me travel, and I had collected some little tiny bit of money enough to travel. So I said I'll do backpacking because I couldn't afford anything else. So I will do a backpacking trip through Europe, and this is my budget, and I want to do 10 countries in 8 weeks and all of that. मैंने अपनी itinerary बना रखी थी. So I had one friend who was in the travel business. So I called him up. उसका office हौस खास में था. I was in Oscars Village. He said, okay, come over, bring your itinerary, and I'll help you. What is your budget? I said, ये मेरा budget है. You have to tell me how to do this. I'll stay in the youth hostels, but I want a cheap ticket. So I went to his office. He was not there. His partner was sitting there, and that partner is my husband. So that's how I met him. And he made this itinerary for me, and then we got to know each other a little bit. And then this other friend kept trying to set us up and whatever, which worked very badly. But anyway, we were seeing each other for 4 or 5 years, and eventually we got married. So he's very much been a part of my journey, even professionally. He's somebody who's always rooted for me, always supported. I have traveled the world alone. It's a high stress, very public life. Fashion is a very public life, and he's always been okay with it. And I just think I'm very lucky to find a partner who is not who's not threatened by my public image. And that is rare with Indian men.
Yes.
That is very rare with Indian men. Instead, he's somebody who was always rooted for me. So he's very secure about who he is. And he has always supported, my ambitions and my dreams. So yeah, we've been married 25 years now. And we have 2 boys. We have twins. So we were planning our first child and the twins arrived. Now the boys have just turned 24. So that's it. And they both studied in the US. One is back now, the other hopefully will make his way back later this year.
Very nice, very nice. तो थोड़ा पायल जी उसके बारे में बताइए, मतलब फैशन डिज़ाइन के बारे में जनरल, बिकॉज जनरली लोग आपको फैशन डिज़ाइन एज ए डोमेन से कोरिलेट करते हैं. यू आर अ वेरी फेमस फिगर इन दिस डोमेन. फैशन डिज़ाइन को थोड़ा सा मॉड्यूलर और इंडिया कॉन्टेक्स्ट के हिसाब से कैसे हम लोग एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं?
So I think as a designer, living in India and being Indian, my strength is textile, is Indian textile and Indian craft. And we are in a unique position in India where you can imagine anything as a designer, and it can be created. Matlab, if you want to have gold stars on a white canvas of clouds, you can even weave that. That is our strength as Indians, and that is our strength as designers in India. So our thousands of years of heritage of Indian textile, Indian weaves, Indian embroideries, Indian block prints, all of this is what is our treasure. So I constantly keep going back, and that's what was my passion even in fashion school. My graduating project was these Kutchi Rabari embroideries, which are in the tribals do, those mirror work करते हैं. And this is way out, it's kind of the border of Jaisalmer in Pakistan, and they do a particular type of Rabari embroidery there. So I had gone there and got these old cholis from these women, and वो barter system होता था तब, तो वो कटोरियाँ देके वो cholis मिल जाती थी. So I made my collection out of that. पैसे उनको समझ नहीं आते थे, so money had no meaning for them. So they said हमें आप कटोरी चम्मच ये ग्लास दे दो स्टील के, you can take our cholis. So that was, and I'm not talking that long ago, I'm only talking about 30 years ago,
Wow.
when this barter thing existed. I don't know now what it is. And that was my graduation project. और वो जो ऊँट के ऊपर वो पहनाते थे ना, they put this thing cover on the ऊँट जिसमें आँख कटी हुई होती है. So I had taken one of those also, और उसका I had made a stole, and that was my final project.
Wow.
So India has so much to offer, and I mean मैंने अभी तक maybe I have worked with 10 states in terms of whether it is weaving or it is block printing or a certain type of other metal block printing or embroideries. I worked maybe in 10 or 12 states. But there is so much more. I mean, Northeast I have not done much work yet. South I have worked with Kanchipuram, and I've done some work with Telangana. But really, there is so much. Even if I spend my whole life exploring Indian textiles, to bhi kam hoga. And the West comes to us for textiles. So in India, if you are a designer or आप fashion पढ़ रहे हैं या textile पढ़ रहे हैं, then you must use your heritage, because that is what sets you apart. Why would I want to be a brand which sells in, say, New York or Milan or Melbourne? Why would I want to compete with them when I am who I am, and that's why they will buy me? Why will a customer buy my clothes? Because I stand for my Indianness, and yet I marry it with a modern environment or modern demographic. But I can't forget my identity. And design is all about identity. So it's really my identity that I'm trying to sell to somebody. So what Yves Saint Laurent is doing, or Gucci is doing, or Prada is doing, they are doing because of who they are. I cannot become them, they will never be me. So for me to stand in my own place, secure, and continue my own language, I have to have that language. Or when I look at design students all the time, I feel I mean, Bollywood is an influence, or Hollywood is an influence to an extent, but it cannot overtake the fact that आपकी अपनी handwriting होनी ज़रूरी है. You know, if you cannot have that handwriting and you get swayed by Taylor Swift is wearing this or Ed Sheeran is performing to this, that is irrelevant to you. You are still who you are, and that is your language, and that is why somebody is buying from you. They are not buying from you because of what the West is doing already. They are good at that. They are the best at that. You cannot become better than them. You can only be good at who you are. Your competition can really be only you, and with your roots being your strength. I can go and buy fabric from China, from Korea, from Japan, but I can't do better than they can do with it. They already are in the design space. So what sets me apart? And I constantly say that to young students, aspiring students, and not just design, not just fashion, even architecture. Look at Indian architecture, look at your roots, look at what was designed 2,000 years ago. Look how they were sustainable buildings. Take inspiration from that. You do not need more glass and steel. Nobody needs, the planet does not need more glass and steel. So not just as a designer, but as a citizen of the planet, sustainability has to be something which has to be important to me, to you, to everybody, because this is the only planet we have, and we can't keep polluting it, we can't keep corrupting it. हम fast fashion खरीद तो रहे हैं, लेकिन वो पड़ा हुआ तो है कहीं landfill में. आपके बच्चे होंगे, उनके बच्चे होंगे, उनके बच्चे होंगे, तब भी वो पड़ा रहेगा. So create what is sustainable, and create as much as is required. Do not just create because fast fashion is detrimental for the planet. You go and buy something, you wear it once and you throw it away. You don't even think.
तो मतलब if I summarize for our listener, मतलब जो हम लोग इंडिया स्पेसिफिक जो जोग्राफी है या रीजनल लेवल पे जो मे बी नॉलेज है या प्रोग्रेस अवेलेबल है इन टर्म्स ऑफ मे बी डिफरेंट यूसेज ऑफ फैब्रिक और क्लोथिंग, वो हम लोग उससे इंस्पिरेशन लेकर के और फिर हम लोग अगर बनाएं, इज दैट समथिंग दैट इज मोर वर्केबल? और बिकॉज इन जनरल मैं देखता हूँ कि जैसे आपने बताया बॉलीवुड या हॉलीवुड, हमारे यहाँ पे मोर मे बी आई थिंक द मोस्ट फैशन अगर स्टेटमेंट्स हैं, जैसे रणवीर या इस तरह के जो लोग, रणवीर सिंह अगर कुछ पहन लेते हैं अपने आप में ही, जो बहुत सारी ऐसी यंग जनरेशन है, जेनजीज हैं, उनके लिए वो फैशन स्टेटमेंट बन जाते हैं, दे स्टार्ट कॉपीइंग दोज मे बी क्लोथिंग्स. इसका इम्पैक्ट ज़्यादा पड़ता है या हम नीचे से लेकर के आते हैं एंड देन it becomes a new kind of statement?
See, that's a personal choice. Of course, you can look at Ranveer Singh and you can say wonderful and he's looking great, and you can try to be him. That is one aspect of it. But if you as a designer are going to start creating that, and he's wearing a Gucci and a Prada and you're trying to create that, then what is the purpose? He's already wearing that. He's doing a good job of it. So what are you adding to the whole thing? मतलब आप किसी और लोगों को उसी में dress करना चाहेंगे? Then I don't think that is creative to start with. It's not about copying. Creativity, fashion as a choice has to be. There has to be something original that you have to say. It's not about copying. You can get inspired, of course.
Yes.
But you can have your own version of that, working with Indian textile. And maybe he will wear it, sure. You can aspire to dress Ranveer Singh, so be it. Make that your goal. But then it should be your language that he is wearing, no? Not his language that you are creating.
Yes.
It has to be other way around. And now the government is doing a lot of work in khadi. And khadi is the fabric of our nation. Gandhiji started the khadi movement, which is how we got freedom. And today khadi is something which connects north, south, east, west, connects every level of the society, from the top to the bottom. Literally everybody can afford khadi, everybody can wear khadi. Now what the government is doing, and what KVIC is doing, which is Khadi and Village Industries Commission is doing, is getting designers to create khadi collections, which then will be affordable for everybody. And there'll be a segment of it which may be a more luxury aspirational segment, but the idea is to make khadi affordable for everybody, and to make it a mass sort of language to roll out to the country. We have how many billion people in this country? If every single Indian owns khadi, buys khadi, that's all you need. You don't need more than that to really promote khadi. You don't have to take it outside the country for khadi to become an everyday conversation between us. So I think a lot of work is being done, and I work with Textile Ministry, I work with KVIC, and I'm seeing that pride for your Indianness, the pride for India coming in, which I think was missing a few years ago. So it's really nice to see.
Okay, so since you have brought in khadi, हम लोग सस्टेनेबिलिटी के बारे में थोड़ी बात कर लेते हैं, खादी के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. मतलब जैसे सस्टेनेबिलिटी एक एस्पेक्ट है जो कि फैशन इंडस्ट्री या डिज़ाइन के साथ में धीरे करके बहुत जुड़ता जा रहा है. हो सकता है पहले से भी रहा हो, बट जैसे खादी का आपने बताया कि भारत सरकार ने इस चीज़ को लेकर के बहुत सारे इनिशिएटिव लेना शुरू कर दिया है. तो ऐसे आपको क्या लगता है कि मतलब व्हेन द खादी विल बिकम द एवरी मैन्स वियर, ऐसा आपको लगता है कि अब से 5 साल में हो जाएगा, 10 साल में हो जाएगा, ऐसा हो सकता है?
नहीं, I think Prime Minister's vision is it should happen in the next 2 or 3 years, and they are really promoting it in every circle. How fast it happens is to be seen, but what is happening is now you're giving khadi all these different forms. तो अगर designers design कर रहे हैं, plus आपका cottage industries में मिल रहा है, plus आपके products design हो रहे हैं. So the whole idea is to make it very popular amongst the masses, that everybody should start thinking of buying khadi. It is completely sustainable. So khadi is the best for the environment. अगर आप, if you take khadi outside of India also, which a lot of khadi is exported already, and the rest of the world also understands what is sustainable. There are certain limitations with khadi in terms of आप कौन से colors कर सकते हैं, किस तरह के garments बना सकते हैं, क्या treatments कर सकते हैं. But working within that space, there are a lot of possibilities.
बट अभी इन जनरल ये कमोडिटी मतलब जो कपड़ा है वो महंगा मिलता है?
नहीं, इतना महंगा नहीं है. और अब खादी कंबाइन भी हो रहा है, आप कॉटन के साथ कंबाइन कर रहे हैं, कुछ पॉली के साथ कंबाइन कर रहे हैं. सो दे आर कमिंग अप विद चीपर वर्जन. अगर आप प्योर खादी खरीदते तो वो महंगा होता था, बट नाउ दे आर कमिंग अप विद लॉट्स ऑफ वेरिएशंस ऑफ खादी, एंड इट इज़ वेरी अफोर्डेबल. इट इज़ एक्चुअली अफोर्डेबल फॉर एवरीबडी.
ओके, तो शायद 2-3 साल में आपके हिसाब से वैसा हो जाएगा. अभी भी बहुत महंगा है, मतलब
अभी भी थोड़ा महंगा है, थोड़ा महंगा है.
मतलब आप 100 रुपए में टी शर्ट खरीद सकते हैं, बट
देखिए खादी में टी शर्ट तो बन ही नहीं सकती. वोवन्स तो बन सकते हैं, निट्स तो बन ही नहीं सकते. तो आपको खादी टी शर्ट तो कभी भी नहीं मिलेगी. द होल पॉइंट इज कि वो हैंडलूम पे बनता है, तो उस पर निटेड फैब्रिक्स नहीं बन सकते. तो आपको कुर्ता मिल सकता है, शर्ट मिल सकती है, पजामा, पैंट, वो सारी चीज़ें अब आ गई हैं. साड़ीज़ मिल सकती हैं, धोतीज, वेस्ट, बाकी सब कुछ बन सकता है खादी में. बट यू कांट डू, आप जीन्स नहीं बना सकते, आप टी शर्ट्स नहीं बना सकते. सो देयर आर सर्टेन लिमिटेशंस, बट उसकी ज़रूरत भी नहीं है. उस स्पेस में और चीज़ें हैं. व्हाई खादी फॉर दैट?
एब्सोल्युटली, बिल्कुल ठीक है. मतलब इन जनरल जैसे आपके जो काम है उसमें हम लोग सस्टेनेबिलिटी और क्या क्या एस्पेक्ट्स में इंटीग्रेट करते हैं?
So sustainability is something I think which is at the core of my business. मतलब हम प्लास्टिक नहीं यूज़ करते, जो mostly fashion brands का bulk of usage of plastic is जब वो garment ship करते हैं. Everything goes into a plastic bag and then it's shipped. So आप thousands and thousands and thousands a month ship करते हैं. हमने ये करीब 10 साल पहले प्लास्टिक बंद कर दिया था. We switched to non-wovens. कहीं भी एक्सपोर्ट हो रहा है, anywhere in the world, we don't use plastic. We don't use any plastic in the office. We don't use any plastic bottles. We don't use polyester in terms of, we don't use any non-sustainable fabrics. So जितने मेरे collections हैं वो भी sustainable fabrics होते हैं. 90% are natural fabrics. And out of that, another 90% are those जो हम scratch से बनवाते हैं. So we weave our own fabrics. Be it Banaras, be it Kanchipuram, be it Telangana, be it Gujarat, be it Rajasthan, सब जगह weavers हैं. So we work with weavers, we create our collections. उसके बाद हम उन पे treatments करते हैं. उसके बाद उस पे printing होगी या embroidery होगी या जो भी processing होगी, treatment होगी, surface ornamentation. It happens after. तो एक collection में I would say it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months. जब से आप सोचना शुरू करते हैं और जब आपको वो रैंप पे दिखेगा, it easily takes 12 to 18 months because I'm creating my fabrics from scratch. अगर हम फैब्रिक खरीद के बना रहे होते तो that process will be much shorter. But that is not the case. That has not been my philosophy from day one. So हम constantly we are trying to work with new and new clusters. जो हमारे captive clusters हैं जैसे चिकनकारी का है लखनऊ में या बनारस में हमारे बहुत सारे फैब्रिक्स वीव होते हैं, वो तो चलते ही रहते हैं. But I'm constantly working with new clusters and developing new fabrics and developing new types of combinations of prints or dyes or embroideries combined करके, because this is a very large part of Indian textile heritage is these clusters, these weaving clusters. अगर आप देख रहे हैं मार्केट में पिछले 20 साल में जितना हैंडलूम या हैंड वोवन साड़ीज या कपड़े होते थे, धीरे धीरे वो कम होते जा रहे हैं. सब कुछ आपको मैकेनाइज पावर लूम मिल गया है. आप ज़ारा जाएंगे, मैंगो जाएंगे, दैट्स ऑल फास्ट फैशन. वो इंडिया को तो कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है उससे. यू आर नॉट हेल्पिंग योर ओन इकोनॉमी इन एनी वे इन टर्म्स ऑफ योर क्लस्टर्स. आपको अपने क्लस्टर्स को सपोर्ट करने के लिए यू हैव टू गिव देम वर्क, नॉट टू वीव, क्योंकि उनके पास काम नहीं है. वो सारा काम एक्सपोर्ट से आ गया. मतलब आप चाइना से फैब्रिक इंपोर्ट कर लेंगे तो आप अपने यहाँ तो बनाएंगे ही नहीं कभी भी. So as young designers, I always tell people, think about supporting your own country, your own craft, your own heritage. Do not go and buy fabric from the West. That anybody can do. पहली बार तो how does that set you apart? कोई भी खरीद सकता है वो. आप डिज़ाइनर हैं तो आप डिज़ाइन कर सकते हो उसको. Why won't you create from scratch? But there's a process, there's a time, there's a cost. There are many reasons why people don't feel the need to do it or are not doing it. But I constantly egg people on and say, you must do it because you will some way give back to society in your own way by supporting these clusters, and they need it constantly. अब बहुत सारे young लोग startups जो हो रहे हैं, startups आ रहे हैं, they are supporting their own. They have got clusters. कोई crochet cluster है, अभी मैंने थोड़े दिन पहले बात की. There's a crochet cluster somewhere in Manesar. These women are sitting in their homes, about 200 women जो crochet करती हैं घर में. So this young girl has started a label जिसमें वो crochet इन सबसे कराती है. She collects, she aggregates, she gives them designs, वो उसके designs बनाते हैं, then she sells it. Somebody else I met who's doing फुलकारी in Punjab. फुलकारी is a dying craft. बहुत कम लोग हैं वहाँ पे. maybe 20-25 women she has who do फुलकारी, and she's trying to revive वो पुरानी techniques, but then there has to be a market. So अगर आप कस्टमर को एजुकेट नहीं करेंगे तो वो क्यों फुलकारी खरीदेंगे और क्यों नहीं डिजिटल प्रिंट खरीदेंगे. They would rather walk into a Zara or Mango or H&M and buy, and not walk into a boutique which is doing fulkari handmade. So that I think that educating the customer is also important. So I am constantly doing that through social media. वो social media, that is your platform. Government भी कर रही है, and I am in talks with the ministry. They are thinking of doing something called the Harit Bharat certification. At least मैंने ये proposal दिया है government को, that you should have a Harit Bharat certification or whatever you want to call it, but which basically when you buy a product, जब आप कुछ market में खरीदते हैं, there should be a tag which tells you कि ये इस क्लस्टर ने बनाया, यहाँ वोवन है, ये इसमें स्पेशल है, ये क्राफ्ट यूज हुआ है, एंड दैट इज व्हाई it's adding to Indian economy and you are changing this person's life. There's got to be something which maps your back end of the process. आप चाइना से, you know what was happening 15 years ago जो हमारे बनारस की सारी वीव्स थी, तांचोई एंड कतरुआ एंड जामदानी, बहुत सारे मेटल जो जरी यूज करा करते थे वीविंग में, उसको they started getting copied in China and they started using lurex and they started dumping that in the Indian market. अब इंडिया में अगर एक वीवर एक साड़ी बनाता है और वो 20,000 रुपए की बेच रहा है, उसके मुश्किल से 2,000 रुपए बनते हैं उसके, और उसको 6 महीने लगते हैं वो साड़ी बनाने में। बट वो जरी है, वो नेचुरल है, वो हैंडलूम पे उसने बनाई है, देयर इज अ सोल व्हिच हैज गॉन इनटू इट। जो चाइना से आ रहा है वो पावरलूम पे बना है, उस पे ल्यूरेक्स व्हिच इज प्लास्टिक डाला गया है और वो 2,000 रुपए में मिल रहा है मार्केट में। तो अब अ कस्टमर डजंट नो द डिफरेंस, वो 2,000 रुपए वाली खरीदेंगे ना, क्योंकि आपने उनको एजुकेट तो किया नहीं है। एंड देन ऑल दीज वीवर्स आर कमिटिंग सुसाइड बिकॉज़ उनके पास काम नहीं है। सो दैट and the government is very cognizant of that, and the ministry is working hard, so we are constantly having panels with the ministry to try and set up something which authenticates. It is like an authentication that it is made in India, this is the craft, this is where it comes from, and this is what is special. You are taking a piece of that weaver's soul home. You are not just buying something which is being churned out by the minute. वो 10,000 साड़ीज एक घंटे में बना रहे हैं और वो इंडिया में डंप कर रहे हैं और आपको फर्क ही नहीं पता चल रहा है, आप खरीद रहे हैं उसको।
तो जैसे आपने एक बताया हरित भारत सर्टिफिकेट के बारे में, जैसे हमें इस चीज़ का अंदाज़ा है जब हम लोग एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं प्राइमरली फ्रॉम इंडिया टू EU और यूरोपियन यूनियन, वहाँ पे CBAM करके सर्टिफिकेशन की रिक्वायरमेंट है, कार्बन बॉर्डर एडजस्टमेंट मैकेनिज्म। उसमें जितना भी हम स्कोप 2 स्कोप 3 जो कार्बन एमिशन है उसकी मैपिंग करके उनको देते हैं, और वो कंप्लायंस रिक्वायरमेंट बन गई है मैंडेटरी। इंडिया में ऐसा स्पेसिफिकली मतलब
नॉट इन गारमेंट्स, नॉट इन टेक्सटाइल एंड नॉट इन गारमेंट्स,
बट ऐसी प्रोसेस जरूर एडवोकेट करनी चाहिए।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। they are talking about it, they are thinking about it. I don't know when it will happen. But carbon is one, amount of water that is used in making it is another. What are the conditions that people are working in? Are these sweatshops, are they being, is there a certain level of hygiene, health which is being provided to the workers? Is it organized, is it not? You see, the problem in India, it's a very fragmented segment. Textile is very fragmented. ये छोटे छोटे क्लस्टर्स हैं, वीवर्स हैं, फिर स्मॉल एंड मीडियम बिजनेसेस हैं, फिर वो लार्ज मिल्स हैं और वेरी लार्ज एक्सपोर्टर्स हैं, और फिर रिटेलर्स हैं। So it's very difficult to have a certification which maps all these demographics. Wow. So you have to have different interventions at each level to be able to create something which covers everybody. Because at the end of the day, your consumer can be touched by any of these or all of these, which is why the challenge is there. But I think it is being worked on. I mean, Harit Bharat certification तो मैंने propose किया. I don't know what is going to be eventually turn out. But all the same, I hope they will have some authentication process, because that is what will safeguard our heritage. Otherwise, ये खत्म होता जा रहा है. कई traditions, weaving traditions, embroidery traditions, बिल्कुल एक फैमिली करती थी या 5 फैमिलीज करती थी, अब वो नेक्स्ट जनरेशन को पास नहीं करते, बिकॉज उसमें पैसे नहीं है। उनके बच्चे आके दिल्ली में काम कर रहे हैं, बॉम्बे में जा रहे हैं, कोई बॉलीवुड जा रहा है, कोई गाड़ी चला रहा है, कोई दे आर वर्किंग इन योर एंड माई होम्स, और दे आर वर्किंग इन आवर ऑफिसेज, दे आर वर्किंग इन कॉल सेंटर्स. They are not carrying that tradition forward. So it will end there. It is not being passed on. So you will never see it. My children will never see it. It is finished. And there is no way of reviving it. So hum as designers, we can keep some of these alive. I mean, चिकनकारी को एग्जाम्पल ले लीजिए. 30 साल पहले जब मैंने काम शुरू किया था, इतनी सारी लेडीज होती थी जिनको आती थी चिकनकारी, जो कर सकते थे. We had clusters we worked with, lots of groups, captive groups. अब वो next generation जो आ गई है, they don't want to learn. They would rather be on their phone. They can make more money on TikTok or on whatever else than they would making one chicken का piece. वो अब 3 महीने लगते हैं एक पीस एम्ब्रॉयडरी करने में एक लेडी को. उनमें वो पेशेंस ही नहीं है. तो the younger generation is not learning it, so it's vanishing. So we are still working with the older generation, जिनको अभी तक आता है वो क्राफ्ट, पर आगे जाके क्या होगा? और 10, 15, 20 साल बाद वो खत्म हो जाएगा, क्योंकि नेक्स्ट जनरेशन तो सीखना ही नहीं चाहती है. And this is just one example I'm giving you. This is true across the country.
Very interesting. I think just to summarize to our listener, what you were saying कि जो marginalized लोग हैं, जो actually में artist हैं, जो काम कर रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा, और उनका काम basically as an input to the lot of designer or to this industry, उनके लिए अब इस सेक्टर को परस्यू करना या इस काम को परस्यू करना मुश्किल होता जा रहा है, because they certainly want to have
I mean, they need basics to even, they're not even able to survive with the amount, with that craft at that price. unless government subsidizes it in some way or starts this authentication process जिससे आपका product अलग doesn't come into the same bucket as fast fashion. You know, you are not catering to that customer.
तो कुछ स्पेसिफिक बताइए कि जैसे आपके अपने काम से,
जैसे अब जो I mean दस्तकार, let me give you as an example, आप दस्तकार हाट में जाते होंगे, दिल्ली हाट गए हैं, वहाँ सारे आपको लोकल क्राफ्ट्स दिख रहे हैं, बट कितने लोग वहाँ जाएंगे वर्सेस अ मॉल. आप मॉल में चले जाएंगे, आपको फटाफट मिलेगा 10 चीजें आपने उठा ली, लेकिन आप क्या वो दस्तकार हाट जाएंगे या वो जो दिल्ली हाट है वहाँ जाके खरीदते हैं?
वो तो कुछ टाइम के लिए लगता है सिर्फ.
नहीं, वो सारा साल चलता है, सारा साल चलता है. बट अगर आपको कुछ खरीदना हो, गिफ्ट विफ्ट, आप फिर भी मॉल जाएंगे. इट वोंट अकर टू यू कि मैं वहाँ जाके खरीद लूँगा. सो दैट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द फास्ट ग्लैमरस, you know, fast fashion route and the indigenous home grown artisanal product.
Very nice. तो आपकी अपनी जो आउटपुट है in terms of lot of maybe artwork that you produce, उससे आपको क्या लगता है कि जो लोग कंज्यूमर हैं उनकी लाइफस्टाइल पे कैसा इम्पैक्ट रहता है?
I think जो मेरे customers हैं, they have an appreciation for this. So I have a niche customer who appreciates the fact that it is handmade, it's hand woven, it's created, it's special, it's unique. It is something they will keep. 20 years later also they are wearing it. जो जिन लोगों ने 30 साल पहले कुछ मेरे से लिया था, वो अभी भी आते हैं कि इसको आप ऑल्टर कर दो, you know, we still want to wear it. So it is something that they feel is something which will remain in there. It's not something वो 2 बार पहन के फेंक देंगे. They don't come to me for that. That is not my customer. And they have that sensitivity. That one, it is good for the environment. 2, it is good for community, society. I mean, and it is helping something. It's serving a larger purpose than simply pure commercial sale and purchase sort of agreement between us. You know.
Do they also appreciate sustainability?
Of course they do. And then it's also about how much you educate your customer. So I'm constantly talking about it. I'm constantly telling them what is special about this craft, who is making it, where it's coming from, what is the back end, what is the life cycle of this garment, and what will happen later. And you want to repurpose it, come back to me, I will repurpose it for you. So I've had clients who come back who may have bought something 25 years ago, अब उनको fit नहीं आ रहा, bring their daughter and say can you fit it on her, and I'll do it, of course.
ये भी एक sustainability का form ही है.
बिल्कुल. आप जैसे I can't throw it away, so I want my daughter to wear it, so can you resize it for my daughter? So I've done that for many people, and yes, and that's what I would like, that you know, you treat this as something which is part of your heritage, and you pass it down to the next generation. You don't throw it away. I'm not creating fast fashion. You are coming to the wrong person if you want fast fashion. Don't come to me. So you know, I think that sort of sync between my customer and me has to be there. The customer who wants that in today, out tomorrow, and wants, you know, like I said, wants to look at a Taylor Swift and wear this particular shot, that's not my customer. That is not my customer. You know, I make classical heirlooms which will remain with you forever.
Very nice. तो एक और पर्सपेक्टिव मुझे लगता है, जैसे आजकल बहुत सारी चीज़ें बहुत फास्ट पेस से बढ़ रही हैं, उसका एक रीज़न सोशल मीडिया भी है. और न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी में जाए तो एआई भी इंटरवेंशन की बात करते हैं. सोशल मीडिया जब पर्सपेक्टिव देखते हैं तो मतलब आपके बिजनेस में इसका कितना इम्पैक्ट, आपने बताया हमें पहले कि आप यू ऑल्सो यूज़ सोशल मीडिया टू maybe actually reach out to the masses, but in general how much does it help in terms of scaling it up?
So today I think social media is your biggest tool. When I started in the business, used to be editors, used to be publications, used to be newspapers, and these editors were gods. And you went and met them, and if they liked you or they felt your work was good enough, they'll write about you, they'll talk about you. But वो सब खत्म हो गया. It's not about publications, not about editors, it's not about media any longer. It is about social media. And but the message you want to put out through social media has to be clear, because it can be very conflicting. You're seeing everything, you're being bombarded by 10,000 things. You are, I am, every single person, every view of your viewers. वो 33 seconds का उनका attention span है, उसके बाद वो next and next and next, you know. Reels बनाते हैं, तो आप 3 seconds ज़्यादा तो 4 seconds ज़्यादा reel नहीं देखेंगे. And then you want the next and you want the next. So now you're trying to engage a customer whose attention span is 5 seconds. Okay, those 5 seconds में ही आपको कहना है जो कहना है. So that message has to be loud and clear in 5 seconds, and it has to hit home. Otherwise you've lost that customer. And that is not age related. It is not a 20 something, it's a 40, 50. Everybody has 5 second attention span. जब हम shows करते थे पहले 1-1 घंटे के fashion shows होते थे. And people would sit and watch, and would be a whole evening. You'll have a drink before, you'll have dinner after, आप socialize करोगे, it's your evening out. अब maximum is 19 minutes. And even in that 19 minutes, people start to tune out after 10 minutes. मतलब you cannot do a show more than 17-18 minutes is a good time. और अगर आप digital show कर रहे हैं, तो 5 minutes is max. If it's online, you cannot do more than 4 or 5 minutes. Because attention span has changed. You have so much bombarding you. I think in some ways, we were better off not having this social media. There was a touch and feel and a reality. You know, I traveled, I would bring back memories, there would be photos, I would sit over them, design a collection. They still remain very special. I don't want to go on the internet and find 20 images and create a collection, which is what is happening now. So if that is your tool set, is just Pinterest or Instagram or whatever, and that's what is inspiring you to create your collection, it's just going to be like the next person's and the next, because they are also using the same. So if you're not authentic about who you are and what your brand is and what you stand for, you can't survive. You cannot. You know, to stay in business for 30 years, and I've seen designers come and go, is because you have, and those who have stayed are those who have their handwriting very clear. They know who they are. They will not do this, that. The noise around you will always be there, but you have to know who you are. So their language remains. Like you see a Ritu Kumar, she is who she was 40 years ago, she still is Ritu Kumar. And कपड़े अभी भी वही हैं. चाहे आपको पसंद आए ना आए, that's irrelevant. But she is still Ritu Kumar and she will be. And that is why she is who she is. So आपकी अपनी handwriting as a creative person has to be very strong.
Very nice. जैसे AI का एक पर्सपेक्टिव है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस का, एंड आई रिसेंटली हैव आल्सो वॉच्ड वन मेबी कंपनी जो कि शार्क टैंक उसने प्रेजेंट किया है, और वो क्या है कि यूनिक मॉडल्स जनरेट करते हैं AI से. फैशन इंडस्ट्री के लिए इस तरीके के मॉडल्स को यूज़ करना टू शोकेस द आर्ट वर्क, ये अपने आप में बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट रहता है. इसको कैसे हम लोग यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं, या आपको लगता है कि विल इट सर्टेनली हेल्प या डिसरप्शन आ जाएगा?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It can help up to an extent if you can use it as a tool to enhance what you are doing. But if you're saying it's going to replace the creative process, it's never going to. It is not going to replace a human being's mind. It is not going to replace the capacity to create. It cannot. It can never. You may think it can, and a lot of people think it can and are using AI to create from scratch. But it is never going to be authentic. It cannot replace the human creativity. And you know, no two people think alike, no two people create alike, but AI is going to come up with the same solution for 2 people or for 20 people. You put in a question to ChatGPT, you put, I put, she puts, everybody puts the same question, you'll get the same answer.
Yes.
At the end of the day. Then what you want to take out of it is your intelligence. And that is where the human being's mind will always remain relevant. So certainly in creative fields, they will never replace, but they can augment, they can enhance, and they can improve what you are doing. But if you think कि वो आपका पूरा process ही take over कर लेगा and you'll have to do nothing except type in a few things and use a few tools, I think it's a mistake.
Very nice. I think summary यही है कि creativity का access replacement available नहीं है.
Or even human intelligence, how can it be? I mean, I can clearly see when I get resumes which are generated by AI and resumes which are generated by a person themselves, because every resume, every document will look the same, and the AI is coming from the same sources. It's putting together. You can ask it 10 different times, 10 different ways, but if you're not going to use your intelligence on the product that it's giving you, it is going to become a clone. You know, you're going to become a clone of somebody else and something else.
So Payal, last में I think आपका जैसे एक इनिशिएटिव है PGMT, प्रेम जैन मेमोरियल ट्रस्ट के माध्यम से for the students, primarily for sustainable education perspective से, उसके बारे में थोड़ा बताइए, और विजन क्या है for those young minds?
So Prem Jain Memorial Trust, as you know, was set up in memory of my father about 6 years ago now, and we basically work in education and sustainability, and both of which were very close to his heart. So sustainability is the prime goal, but we are working with students to share this message that they need to start living sustainably, think sustainably, have careers which are sustainable, and what are the prospects of sustainability, pursuing such careers. And that does not limit you to engineering or architecture. It can be design, it can be any other spaces, but how they can be sustainable careers. So in the last 6 years, we have done a lot of work with students, and we have set up a lot of awards. We are hoping to continue doing more. One thing I would like to say, this year we will have about 10 lakhs, which is put out there for various awards we are establishing in the premier institutions for one student each who's doing exceptional work in the area of sustainability. Some are in design related and art related fields, some will be in architecture and engineering. So this is spread across the country. And we're hoping to do a lot more, and we do want more and more people to join with us. I mean, this is a personal crusade. This is a crusade for everybody who joins has to believe in sustainability, has to believe this planet and this is finite, and we need to add to its nurturing, to its well-being, and not take away from it. So what we take from the planet, we should be giving back more.
Perfect. I think it's a very enriching, very much like a knowledge based session that we have. We got to know a lot about you, Payal. So thank you so much for being a great guest today. और हम चाहते हैं कि आपके साथ में इसका पार्ट 2 भी बनाएंगे, बिकॉज मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारी इंफॉर्मेशन है, 30 साल का एक्सपीरियंस है, इट शुड गो आउट फॉर द पीपल, ताकि आपकी लाइफ जर्नी से थोड़ा और इंस्पिरेशन लें, लोग एंटरप्रेन्योर बने इस इंडस्ट्री में, फैशन डिज़ाइन में, सस्टेनेबिलिटी फील्ड में. हमें लगता है कि दैट इज़ अ मेन कॉज दैट वी ऑल हैव. एक कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन है जो हम लोग करते हैं. वी हैव एजुकेशनल इनिशिएटिव कॉल्ड GT अकेडमी, जहाँ से हम लोग जिसके साथ में हम लोग पॉडकास्ट करते हैं एज ए गेस्ट. वी कंट्रीब्यूट फ्रॉम द अकेडमी साइड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ लेट्स से द फ्री कोर्सेज. तो हम लोग जैसे जो कोर्सेज अवेलेबल हैं हमारी वेबसाइट पे, विल बी हैप्पी टू ऑफर दोज वर्थ ऑफ द courses to your PGMT
to our green ambassadors. Yes, that would be amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
that
much.
Is wonderful.
Thank you so much.